Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore-Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair.
and me, Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
Welcome, book lovers. We have a lot of great shows coming up for 2025. And before we get started talking about a new list of exciting titles, we thought we'd take a moment to stop and reflect on 2024. So today we're doing a special minisode, a special year-end look back at our 2024 season.
2024 was our 5th year of podcasting, and we have some terrific news to share. While we stream primarily in North America, we've reached listeners in nearly 80 countries. The next largest group of listeners outside this continent are in Germany, Ireland, Singapore, and France. Our top episodes for all time were From Frost to Spring, Ellie Blake and Juniper Spring Roundup, Digging Deep with Harvey Ovshinsky, What the Chickadee Knows with Margaret Newton, Running Amok with Kevin Spenst, and Bronwen Wallace Award winner Alexa Winnick. Recently, we have also had new listeners in the Netherlands, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro.
And so far, our most popular episodes for 2024 are How to Build a Boat with Elaine Feeney, On Community with Casey Plett, The Blood of Five Rivers with Arjun Bedi, The Book of Benjamin with Ben Robinson, and The Future with Catherine Leroux. But one thing we've learned in the last 5 years is that time is a big factor. The list of what people download the most changes as some of the newer episodes from last year circulate. It also changes as people go back and catch up with our shows from a couple of years ago, which they often seem to do.
Certainly do. And it's great if there's new news about an author or a book, that also helps as well. So today we're going to go back over the list of shows we've posted in 2024 and talk about the books or authors that we found most surprising or interesting or unique in some way. Last year, we seemed to gravitate towards one of each genre, poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. Would you say that happened again this year?
There were books or authors in poetry, nonfiction, and fiction that I really enjoyed this year, but my 3 favorite books of those we featured on the podcast were a poetry collection, a short story collection, and a novel.
I went mostly fiction this year. It was a great year for storytelling.
It was indeed. Usually my leaning is fiction, but with the hard support for poetry. But with this roundup, it's a mashup of poetry, nonfiction, and yes, some fiction. It's an indication of the great variety of work that comes to our podcast. Attic? Are we in a podcast attic?
How about a virtual studio?
There we are. Let's get started with our highlights for 2024. Irene?
So one of the most moving books I read this year was Diver Beneath the Street by Petra Kuppers, and interviewing Petra was truly a highlight for me. The episode was released in May, so if anyone's missed it, they should go and find it and also read the book. I highly recommend it. First, let's talk about Petra Kuppers. She's a poet, educator, dancer, disability culture activist, and community performance artist who is a queer woman of size with disabilities, originally from Germany, but now living in Michigan. Like, already fascinating. Her latest book, Diver Beneath the Street, is intriguing, disturbing, and beautiful. It's a poetry collection based on the 1967 to 1969 Michigan murders, the 2019 Detroit serial killer, and the COVID-19 lockdown. However, it honors victims of violence and other lives lost by way of eco-poetry, examining the relationship between people of nature and even the beautiful decomposition of bodies, houses, hair, and bones in the soil, in the water, in the environment. It sounds icky, but it's gorgeous, and it was a book that I just could not put down.
It was pretty special and unique. And as ever, it's hard to choose favorites out of so many worthies, right? But ones that live in my head for various reasons. Precedented Parroting by Barbara Tran is one. It's a very accomplished poetry collection by a multidisciplinary artist emerging in this field. I found that I learned about form and subject from a perspective I wouldn't get anywhere else. And yet I also related to Tran's portrayal of the immigrant experience, even if I haven't undergone the same racism that she also describes. Also, it's a poetry about birds, but not rote nature poems. These are birds and with attitude. Published by local publisher Palimpsest Press, which is also on the rise, this book was long listed for the CBC Nonfiction Prize.
I'm going to share my highlights in the order that we posted the episodes first to last. One of our first books for the year was How to Build a Boat by Elaine Feeney. This is a novel about a neurodiverse younger teenager in Ireland starting a new year at a very conservative Catholic school. He misses his mom, who died when he was born, and he's a bit of a loner. But a couple of teachers help him find a place at school by setting out to build a traditional Irish boat. Along the way, they also build a quirky kind of community. It's a wonderful story of people banding together to survive in a harsh environment, and it's heartfelt and uplifting without ever becoming too sweet or sentimental. The book was longlisted for the Booker Prize in 2023, and it was also a New Yorker Best Book of 2023, along with several other prizes. It was published by Biblioasis of Windsor.
My second pick is The Curious Lives of Nonprofit Martyrs by George Singleton. I don't think I've ever laughed harder during an interview. George Singleton is a hoot. His short story collection, The Curious Lives of Nonprofit Martyrs, is hilarious. Sometimes known as the people's satirist, George Singleton grew up in South Carolina, and he brings a small town Southern sensibility and a unique comic flair to his writing. His latest short story collection did not disappoint. The episode aired in March 2024, and if anyone hasn't heard it, you need to go back and give it a listen. And then get the book and prepare to laugh. It's both lighthearted and thought-provoking, and I think it would pair particularly well with a comfy couch, a blankie, and maybe a hot beverage over the holidays.
For sure. I'm going with nonfiction here, and Casey Plett's On Community, published by Biblioasis here in Windsor, in which she discusses what community means, how she relates to it, and how perhaps we can find it, which is so important in these times, and how we can advocate and even fight for community. And as a generally compliant rule follower myself, what stuck with me about this book is that Plett's style here is not a formal academic essay in tone. Although the information she gives is well thought out and researched, it's her voice, complete with uncertainty, maybe the odd expletive. It's a conversation with us. And as Casey is also a publisher, I passed on a copy on to my friend who lectures on publishing at Brooks at Oxford University. And I feel like this title needs to be canon in a course like that.
My next book is The Blood of Five Rivers with Arjun Bedi. This novel was published by local publisher Palimpsest Press, and if you love a generational saga with lots of drama, international settings, and bits of wry philosophical humor woven in, then you will love this book. It was Arjun Bedi's debut novel, and I hope he has another one in the works because he's a wonderful storyteller with a really engaging voice. The story is about a young Sikh man born in the Punjab not long after the division between Pakistan and India, and he grows up and travels the world as an economic migrant. He eventually makes his way to Canada and brings his parents over. Then he marries and has a family of his own. It's also the story of his son, who was born and raised in Canada. The son is trying to understand his father, but struggles to relate the stories from his travels and life in the Punjab with the father he grew up with, a man who's very much changed by his experience. The Blood of Five Rivers is a big, classic, sweeping saga with modern sensibilities and some wonderful characters. It's a great read.
The Future by Catherine Leroux is my third pick. Originally written in French as L'Avenir, translated into English by Susan Orio, and published in the English language by Windsor's own Biblioasis Press, the novel has picked up many accolades. Winner of Canada Reads 2024, longlisted for the 2024 Carol Shields Prize for Fiction, one of CBC Books' best books, etc., etc. Our interview with Catherine Leroux was released in March, and I enjoyed that conversation immensely. Catherine spent a lot of time in our region, the Detroit River borderlands, doing research prior to writing the novel. And in it, she imagines a dystopian world located in a fictionalized version of Detroit, the city as it might have been had it always remained a French settlement. The novel is hopeful, devastating, poetic, and remarkably thought-provoking. The imaginary Fort Detroit, where people and nature show great resilience amid the decay, certainly compels the reader to look at the world we're inhabiting now through new eyes, and the characters are unbelievably memorable. And as an interviewee, the fluently bilingual Catherine Leroux was certainly charming and a delight.
And on to fiction for me. Anomia by Jade Wallace, published by Palimpsest, is their debut work of fiction. They are a great poet. And it also breaks new ground. It's primarily an entertaining whodunit set in a small town. And much has been said about Wallace's challenge to self not to include gendered pronouns. I feel like that shouldn't be looked at as a gimmick, though. If you As you get into the rhythm of the conversations between and about the characters, it just becomes part of the warp and weft of the cloth of the story, and it's definitely worth a read.
My third pick is Non-Disclosure by Renee Bondi, another debut novel. Renee is from Chatham, and the novel was published by Second Story Press in Toronto. One of the things I loved about it was the element of surprise. She writes from the point of view of a young woman who survives sexual abuse by a Catholic priest, a topic that can be both delicate and disturbing. But in Renee's hands, this book turns into a sensitive and gentle story about a young woman finding her voice, which is something many women can relate to. The author was working on this book when she studied at Humber School for Writers, where her mentor was Diane Chamberlain. If you like Miss Chamberlain's work, I would say there's a similarity in the quiet tone and the closely observed, insightful observations the main character makes in Renee's book. It's not at all what you might think at first, and ultimately, it's a very hopeful story of healing and community building, as well as a wonderful read. And speaking of surprises, I'd also like to do a quick shout out for Sorry About the Fire from Colleen Coco Collins, also published by Biblioasis. Her poetry has a unique sense of language and a playful connection to nature that's just delightful. To be honest, I read this one twice when we were doing the podcast. The first time, because it was so different, I just wasn't sure I quite got it. But the second time, I just fell in love with it.
So, dear listeners, as you can see, Kim actually selected 4 books. I think that's an automatic DQ, but we'll be charitable since it is, the holiday season. Early in 2025, we are looking forward to sharing new work from Windsor's Poet Laureate Emeritus, Marty Gervais, and current Poet Laureate Peter Rastovec. We'll also be sharing a couple of short story collections with the comic edge. Hello Horse by Richard Kelly Kemick, published by Biblioasis, and Dearborn by Ghassan Zainadine. And we'll be talking with New York Times bestselling author and Harrow resident Ellie Blake about her new book, The Forest King's Daughter. We wish everyone a great holiday season and happy reading. See you in 2025. Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.